Now, that's the focus of our conversation this morning. And joining me to discuss this is an oil and gas analyst, Mr. Balazaka, who joins us from our studio in Abuja. Good morning, and thank you for joining us this morning. Now, what impact do you think this initiative will have on the country's oil and gas industry, particularly our gas infrastructure?
Well, thank you for giving me this opportunity. I saw it, I heard about it, and I saw it. I appreciate the initiative of government, but most of the time, after the appreciation, the next thing to expect is the crystallization. Everything I heard about this initiative is to make sure there is this ease of transportation. But to the best of my knowledge, this is going to be an uphill task. But the best thing is to always be optimistic. You know, if you look at it very well, right from the days of coal, Nigeria is endowed with so much coal, you know, but because of one reason or the other, we felt we were moving away from fossil fuel, right, or energy, and we abandoned coal. So many nations are still using coal to generate power and to generate so much revenues to drive their economies. And they are not only emerging nations, they are developed economies. We got ourselves in crude oil, right? And we felt one of the things to do was to see if we were going to refine. Today, we are not refining, and we're importing. Then at a point, we felt we needed to unbundle NEPA because we predicated that on the availability of gas to drive the gas turbines. Where are we today? And I'm seeing us now talking about compressed natural gas. I don't have a problem with that. Natural gas, of course, is a cleaner fossil fuel. But I want to tell you that to the best of my knowledge, Nigeria today does not produce even the spoke of a bicycle. Nigeria cannot, despite the rubber plantations, Nigeria cannot claim to be producing the tire of a vehicle. We can't produce even the plug of a vehicle. We can't even produce the battery of a vehicle. What that simply tells me as a loyal Nigeria is that, we have enough resources, both natural, material, and human resources. If the economic managers manage the resources very well, then we are going to see productivity. But I'm not that kind of Nigerian, though I'm 100% loyal. I'm not a Nigerian who is just interested in paper economy. I am interested in practical economy, and I'm a realist. So I hope it crystallizes.
Now, if you say we have the resources, just like you mentioned, then why then do you believe that this is actually an uphill task?
It's an uphill task because, you know, we talk about the elementaries when you're talking about growing an economy. You know, you had crude oil, right? You are a member of a crude oil cartel, and you cannot produce distillates internally. You are importing. And we got to a point where we are made to understand that our country is not into the business of refining, and nobody can justify why other OPEC countries are doing better. And recently, even a neighboring country whose nameplate capacity, I'm talking about nameplate refining capacity, is like 1/20th of ours, and is a government-owned processing facility called a refinery. So the practical realities are there. Everything about us has always been hinged on corruption. But as far as I'm concerned, corruption is an attitude. Corruption is not a concept. You can throw away a bad attitude. Corruption is just a bad attitude. And even when you talk about restructuring mechanisms of an economy, privatization is a good restructuring mechanism. Liberalization is a restructuring mechanism. So is commercialization and deregulation. But sometimes you need to look at the peculiarities of your nation before deploying any of these mechanisms to take care of your country. As far as I am concerned, deregulation will do us more harm. And even though we have finally been made to accept that deregulation is the way to go in terms of the downstream sector of the Nigerian oil and gas. I have a very simple question. The deregulation we are now made to accept, is it an import-focused deregulation or internal domestication deregulation? If you cannot use the abundant natural gas you have to drive the gas turbines, become self-sufficiency in electricity, provide power so that you can have glut at the filling station, how can you be talking to me about compressed natural gas when in the first place you don't produce any cars, even spare parts you don't produce? When that crystallizes, how do we go about it? So we're talking about first principle here. If we were to be manufacturers of automobile, then I can see the angle we're coming from. And that was why I said, I don't believe in paper economic restructuring mechanisms. I believe in practical economic restructuring mechanisms.
Well, I also believe that we need to start from somewhere. Perhaps that's the angle the federal government is looking at it from. But then you talked about the regulation now. Do you actually think that this initiative is enough to cushion the impacts of the deregulation of the downstream sector on the citizens?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, the effect is going to be zero. And I stand to be contradicted. And the reasons are simple. If you feel the disposable income has been eroded due to inflation, right? And we know that we are not experiencing investment due to business climate hostilities. And we know that our government cannot invest because our government is not generating good revenues. And we also know that our export-import differential is near zero because we are exporting virtually nothing called produce or finished goods. What we need to do is to take steps that will cushion the pains. What Nigerians are going through is basically economic pains. And one of the things we are not getting, apart from the insecurity that has ravaged all economic indices, is we're not seeing power. So, and how do you generate power? When you wanted to unbundle NEPA as our economic managers or national leaders, you predicated it on the availability of natural gas. The natural gas is there now, and we cannot see abundance of power. The same natural gas, we know from natural gas you can get ammonia. From ammonia, you can get urea. From urea, you can get fertilizer, and there will be food sufficiency. But as I speak today, let anybody tell me how much the price of fertilizer costs today compared to 10 years ago. And it's also supposed to be gotten from natural gas. You didn't use the natural gas to drive turbines to generate electricity for your citizens so that they will have abundance of electricity and forget about the petrol, so that there will be glut at the filling stations. We didn't use the natural gas to make sure there is sufficiency in fertilizer production, whether the granular fertilizer or the liquid fertilizer. The price of fertilizer is still rising. So if we can talk about this, then how can I get convinced, though I'm an optimist, that we want to go into compressed natural gas, when even we know that we have not started producing the spoke of a bicycle. If we had started from producing spoke of a bicycle, then we now went to motorcycles, then we went to tricycles, then you can see the graduation. Every loyal Nigerian will want to be an optimist. But if I see an economy that is driving towards the cliff and almost trying to fall into the cliff down the valley, and I'm seeing reasons that I cannot reconcile in my brain, as a loyal Nigerian, I am bound to ask questions.
Perhaps in the coming days, we'll get more clarity and then answers to your questions. But then now, the federal government has promised to deliver 1 million conversion kits now with this initiative. But do you actually see Nigerians actually tapping into this initiative?
Well, I'm sorry if I will answer your question with a question. You're talking about 1 million conversion kits. How many vehicles, by your estimation, do we have in Nigeria? was the population of Nigeria. You're talking about a country of about 200 million citizens, and you want to bring in 1 million conversion kits to convert how many cars? To the best of my knowledge, we have probably more than close to probably 20, 30, or 40 million cars.
But we need to start
so
from
what
somewhere.
would 1 million do?
We need to start from somewhere, which is probably what the federal government is doing.
Yeah, but when you want to start from somewhere, you start based on principles. You start based on concepts that work, because the world is driven or guided and led based on principles and concepts.
All right, now let's talk about the cost of conversion now. Of course, vehicle owners are to pay as much as 250,000 naira to convert a 6-cylinder engine. But how does this make the scheme more beneficial than petrol? Let me hear your view on that.
And I'm sorry if I would also want to answer with almost a comment that is going to be like a question. And that's where the confusion comes in. You're talking about internal combustion engines. You're talking about different cars in Nigeria from different manufacturers. And different manufacturers have different specifications for their spare parts or for the components of their vehicles. We have probably 10 different cars in Nigeria from 10 different manufacturers. And I am being made to understand that I want to have a conversion kit that can go and be at resonance with those 10 different cars and 10 different engines. And that's why I said, please, sometimes, let's be fair to our citizens. I'm a technocrat, and technocrats are not supposed to be political. Technocrats are supposed to be objective. As an objective technocrat, I see more of confusion, but I still remain an optimist.
Yes, we need to stay optimistic. And then looking at it now, I mean, about 2 million jobs are expected to be created through this scheme. So what should the government do to attract private investors in this auto gas scheme?
Well, when you come out with an approach, you must show the principles, you must show the modalities, and you must show the dynamics that will lead to crystallization. I keep using the word crystallization because it will be the thing, or it will be what will finally show what you have metamorphosed into. So when you say you want to create jobs, how? If you think, okay, in the process of doing that, you will have artisans, you will do this, you will do that, and that's how you want to create jobs, then I ask you a very simple question. You will create, if you feel you will create only maybe 2 million jobs in this, I can tell you that if you decide to bring our refineries on stream, the 4 refineries, you are likely to create more than 10 or 20 million jobs, because the taxi drivers will get jobs, the mama put sellers will have jobs, the carpenters will have jobs, the plumbers will have jobs. I'm not talking about the oil and gas engineers, oil and gas accountants, oil and gas environmentalists, oil and gas lawyers that will be working there. So let's be truthful as technocrats. Sometimes we should have the courage and boldness to let our leaders know that if they say we should go to the left, and we feel that going to the left is likely to be injurious to the economy and their image, we should be bold enough to tell them. And if there are other ways, or if in the coming days we're going to see explanation on how these jobs will be created outside what I analyze or explain, I will be a happy Nigerian to also see it, learn about it, and key into it.
Well, on a broader perspective now, as a key player in the oil and gas sector that you are now, how would you rate the government's push for more investment in the sector?
Well, it's very clear. Regardless, well, we know that we all experience the global pandemic. The global pandemic rubbished the thinking of pundits, political leaders, economic leaders, and national leaders. But we all accepted that because that was a pandemic. And I think we are yet to globally exit the pandemic. But on a realistic note, if you look at the Nigerian oil and gas industry, we now have probably a lot of basins and we can see progress. Of course, everybody knows the Niger Delta as a prolific basin in terms of hydrocarbon endowment. We have also discovered hydrocarbon in the Dahomey Basin, which is like the Lagos axis. We have discovered hydrocarbon in the Anambra Basin. Recently, we have discovered hydrocarbon in the Benue Trough. We still have additional basins like probably the Sokoto Basin, part of Gongola, and Bida Basin, and the Lake Chad Basin. What I can say, as far as I'm concerned as a practitioner, is that it's no longer the asset endowment, but it's the management of our human, material, and natural assets that matters. We should stop talking about economic vampires, economic traitors, and betrayers. Because every time we talk about that corruption, it just has to do with economic marauders. And we can do away with them if we want to.
Okay. Oil and gas analyst, Mr. Balazaka, thank you so much for sharing some of your time with us this morning.
Thank you.
We will be talking commodities when we return in just a moment. Don't go away.